This is Brother Willie Muhammad, and this is my story.
What's your story?
Gotcha. So for the people who don't know, I'm like, tell them where you from.
So I grew up in uptown New Orleans in an area that's called the Irish Channel, and it's between it still is between the St. Thomas Housing Project, or what was known as the St. Thomas Housing Project, the 10th Ward, in the 12th Ward. So I grew up on the streets, Annunciation and Harmony Street.
Gotcha. So growing up, able in the 10th ward. Are you talking about the St. Thomas Project?
The St. Thomas Project. So
for everybody who's not familiar, I want to.
Yeah, that's the St. Thomas Project. So I had relatives from the St. Thomas Project, but we lived in the 11th Ward. And I remember that at one time watching the news, because the dope dealers in that area began to start paying crackheads to set people cars on fire who was calling the police because they were selling crack. And I remember the news at that time actually listing the neighborhood in which I lived in as one of the most violent in the city and one of the most crime-ridden.
Gotcha. Yeah, I can tell people New Orleans was, especially in the 90s, like I was a kid, but I heard the stories and I'm like, they had some real, clever, criminals back then.
Oh, listen, man. I remember, brother, I can remember that's when they first started counting the murders every day. Like every day you would turn on the news and it would bold letters would come on the news and they say number 200 and whatever. And I remember they used to say if you wore these Adidas, they were called Forum Adidas, high top Adidas. They were saying at one time, if you wear them, you're going to end up getting killed. This was during the time, they were superstitious, but most of the people who were wearing Adidas Forums were out there hustling as well, right? But this was the time also in the area where they were robbing for starter jackets, robbing and killing.
Jordans and all.
Yeah, Jordans and all. So, so I grew up in that area, in that neighborhood, as I said earlier, that I began to really realize how wild it was after leaving out of that neighborhood, after growing up and realizing, because it was nothing to see somebody get shot. It was nothing to see women at night walking barefooted, pregnant, trying to score crack cocaine. It was nothing to see the longshoremen who would get off at the wharf and try to walk to the nearest grocery store, and the brothers in the neighborhood would give out the call, and they'll go up and just rob these longshoremen, these Asian men out of what they had. And here we're sitting all on the porch laughing and joking about it, just thinking that it's entertainment, but it was straight up wild.
Right. My bad. I was also saying, earlier to you, like, New Orleans is a very unique place because they have gangs everywhere. And we live in a city where we know the killer, the victim, is either we going to do something about it or be quiet. And I tell people, like, New Orleans, our beef is like next door. We don't have too many, street beefs. Like people beefing with their own relatives, brothers, siblings, everything. So how do you grow up with that?
Like you said, in the stats that they come out talking about homicides every year, they show that a large percentage of the homicides in New Orleans, that the victim actually knew the perpetrator. They were once friends at one time and they fell out, right? I went to Walter L. Cohen, and you had Walter L. Cohen, you had the St. Thomas there, you had members of the Magnolia, and then you had all of these neighborhoods in between, right? So I wasn't out there in the streets like that. I had cousins who were out there. The most sometimes I would do is my cousin would give us a couple of dollars to be able to hide his crack cocaine in our house from my mom. And I remember one time trying to get out, the word on the streets used to be, the language used to be, man, we're going to put you on your feet. And that was to talk about you selling drugs or whatever when the summer come. And I remember, man, trying to sell crack one time, brother. And I remember on the corner on 7th and I think it was St. Thomas, and there was this crackhead who had a car, but it was like a car that normally the police would use, right? And when he saw everybody on the corner, he just sped up, and I had crack in my hand. Man, I froze, right? I froze. I'm like, Lord, I'm thinking, here the police come, but it was him. And at that moment, for me personally, I realized, like, selling this crack is not something that I want to actually do, right? And, there are things that happen in your life, and I think things happen in our life to help put us on certain paths. I had a cousin who I greatly admired, and may God be pleased with him, and he was murdered, right? And I remember my cousin, who's still alive now, we were walking back from his father's house, and there was a girl. You in the neighborhood, you see the police cars zoom around, and you see all of this stuff. And I remember a girl saying, the boy that got shot, he's black and he got a mouth full of goals. And when she made that description, I immediately understood that that was my cousin there. And I can remember going there as a teenager in middle school, seeing my cousin laying on the ground with bullet holes in him over a murder that took place from somebody that he knew, and they fell out over crack cocaine.
And a lot of people understand just even seeing that, that's very that's real trauma.
Yeah, and a lot of times we have a lot of trauma and we don't even realize it's trauma. We just grow up with it and keep it moving. Normal. Yeah, we feel like we keep it moving and we don't realize like that is traumatic. Right. You got people who go to wars and they see that type of stuff and they got to seek therapy. We just keep it moving and begin to start self-medicating and doing stuff, be it alcohol, be it drugs, be it sex, or be it committing more acts of violence. And that's our way of dealing with it.
And I tell people, I'm like second line. The only people still feel it is the close relatives, the mom and everybody. Everybody else then moved on after they wore your T-shirt and everything like that. But the people who actually, dealt with on day to day, still feels that effect.
They still feel that. They still feel that effect, and that's one of the things that people don't realize. In this position that I have as the student minister of Muhammad Mosque number 46, I think about that when you're doing these funerals. That for everybody else, after the service is done and gone, they're going back to their lives. But the people who they really need us, they need us more days after that funeral service than on the day of that funeral service. And oftentimes, very few who attend that funeral service reach out to them afterwards to be there for them.
And that's that's the crazy part about the whole situation. Is but after weeks or months pass, ain't nobody checking or even mentioning the person again.
I know.
So I always tell people, when I tell people man, you only live one life. Nobody's not gonna be checking for you after you go.
Nobody, brother. And it's interesting that you brought that up because I had that recent thought again. Right where we are right now, not too far from it, they had the unfortunate incident that took place on New Year's Eve, right? And one of the things that made me realize how life doesn't stop, less than 48 hours later, Bourbon Street was back open and New Orleans was back New Orleans. And we just had, how many people? 11 people that lost their lives? And that just goes to show, the world is not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to keep moving.
I ain't I almost thought, New Orleans ain't a real place. It's we was back up. I mean, everything. I'm it just had a little more security, but
right.
It was dang. It was you would have never thought we had we didn't even never thought we had one terrorist attack in New Orleans.
Because it goes to show you that what's really important to this world. This world is more important. Money is more important than human life.
But I think that if he would have been very successful of his plan, I think it probably would have shook things a little bit more up. If he would have blew something up on Bourbon Street, then I don't think the Super Bowl would have went how it went.
Yeah, you never know, man. That almighty dollar is God.
It still was gonna find a way.
Like Wu-Tang say, cash rules everything around me. Cream, it makes stuff happen, man. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, and the crazy part is about that. I'm a fortunate story. I just was reading that. But one of the kids that was killed in that wreck, his grandparents just got ran over.
I just saw that on the news yesterday. I saw it.
And I told my wife, I said, when I was young, I read something sometimes your family could be cursed from the things that your elders, that your previous people did in the past, and things like that be happening. And I said, I don't want to fully all the way get to that. I'm just saying, but I read something dang, and it looked like it was and it seemed like it was true.
Yeah, it's. Life is interesting, man, and that's why we are taught that what's important is what we do from the day that we are born and what we do from between the day that we're born and then between the time that we die. That's why we got to make the most of this life that we have in a righteous way, because some people will hear that and say, that means I'm going to go wild out. And you think about it, right? In the Holy Quran, the book that we read, the book of scripture that we read as Muslims, in addition to the Bible as well, because we read the Bible too. Allah says in the Quran, God says that Satan makes evil fair seeming, right? And you think about how we've been taught to celebrate life, our birth anniversaries. What most people do. Man, what you doing on your birthday? Man, I'm about to go get white boy wasted. I'm about to go drink whatever. I'm about to go smoke whatever. And then if I go in the club, I'm going to leave out with whomever. And we end up celebrating what we're taught to be life, engaging in acts of death. And you ask somebody the next day after their birthday, man, how's your birthday? man, I tore it down. But we don't even realize that we did it, and we did it by participating in acts that can really take away life. And that's one of the things the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, that when it comes to our birth anniversary or our birthdays, one of the first people that we need to give thanks to, of course, is God, but we also need to thank our mother and our father for being the vessels that God allowed us to come to this earth in. But we live in a world right now where we're just taught to be more, we think more about ourselves. What gifts have you given me? You ain't giving me no gift. But look, man, what are we doing with our life that is adding to the forward promotion of the world and the growth of the world? Are we being here just taking up space?
Gotcha. So, you were telling me earlier, I'm about to transition.
Yeah.
So you was telling me about this movie.
Yeah.
And you actually heard about,
Yeah.
the Minister Farrakhan. So, kind of explain,
So, brother, I grew up in uptown New Orleans, and I remember as a teenager thinking about this. I thought about all of the friends that I had from Louisiana Avenue, let's say from Louisiana Avenue and Magazine, with Magazine Chapatulas, all the way up to Jackson Avenue, Magazine and Chapatulas. And I thought about all of the male friends that I knew, how many of them had fathers in their homes. And out of all my male friends, I could only count one who had a father in his house, right? And the reason why I thought about that was because at the age of 12, my father, for a variety of reasons, he left me and my mom with my youngest brother. And I remember my uncle, who I have great respect for, coming to me saying, you have to be the man of the house right now. And I didn't know what a man was. But if my mother needed me to be a man, I had to find out what it was. And I remember turning to rap music. I remember looking at my older cousins. And I remember looking at television, trying to get an understanding of what a man was. And you can imagine I didn't get a proper understanding of what a man was, because one of the qualities that I was taught from those sources of what a man is one who just manipulates females, how much money you got, how many people respect you in your neighborhood. It was none of the stuff that was meant, that what really identifies and determines and defines what a man is. So there was a movie called Indecent Proposal. And for those who are watching this, you may not know what Indecent Proposal is, but you can go and watch the movie. Indecent Proposal was a movie where this man and his wife went to Vegas. They were gambling, lost their money, and then they were stuck out. And this millionaire, multi-millionaire, actually approached the man and offered the man $1 million if he can have one night to be with this man's wife. And the man and his wife discussed it back and forward. It's going to be one night. I don't love him like I love you. And when they had the night came, the millionaire romanced this lady, took her to a fine restaurant, brought her to buy this expensive dress, had a helicopter, flew out to a boat, a yacht in the middle of the ocean. And he got in her head after being intimate with her that night. And I remember my friends and I sitting on the corner discussing what would we be willing to accept for somebody to have one night with a girl who we consider to be our girlfriend. And I remember engaging in that conversation, but I didn't really feel down for that conversation. But in that day and time, I wasn't going to say anything, because you'd have been saying, oh, you soft on them. They would say at them time, you Captain Save or whatever. But my spirit was not with that conversation, but I didn't have the knowledge as I do now to be able to respond and say, man, that's inappropriate to even be thinking like that. But that night I'm watching Cox Cable. It was on a community channel, and Minister Farrakhan was speaking at Southern University in New Orleans. And what caught my attention was he mentioned the movie Indecent Proposal. And he said that he wished a man would ask him such a question like that. He said if the man did so, he would be picking his teeth up from off the ground. And immediately, when I heard the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan explain that and how valuable a woman is, and we shouldn't allow any man to have access to women in a way to degrade them, that was the beginning of transforming my understanding of what a true idea and model of what a man is.
Gotcha. So, transitioning, for the people who not, I'm familiar with, what, what the Nation of Islam is and what it's about. I want you to kind of, give one brief, description, and before we fully get into it.
Yeah. I would say this, brothers and sisters, the Nation of Islam is an an organization about striving to be obedient to God. That's what Islam means. Islam means to submit your will to do God's will. So we are a nation of people, or working to be a nation of people who are striving to be obedient to God, to do God's will. And we believe that we are doing the same thing that Moses did, that Noah did, that Jesus did, and all of the other servants of God that we read about in the Bible.
All right. I just think a lot of people have different perspective of the Nation of Islam about watching TV and movies.
That's a fact.
Because the first time I ever was even introduced to the name was probably Malcolm X movie. Then I watched The Wire, and The Wire had the dude as a security guard type of hitman.
Brother Monzoon. Yeah. What's his name was? Muzan or something, right?
Yeah, it just was people always have this and the first time I really saw the Nation of Islam face to face was probably surrounded by G Electronica.
Okay, when he came in for that, he did a performance. Yeah. The stuff that you see on television is definitely not a representation of the Nation of Islam. And I tell people who watch the movie Malcolm X, if you go and read the autobiography, you will see that a lot of things that they actually had in the movie were not accurate. Like they show Malcolm X going to jail and the police busting in his home. In the book, he didn't go to jail that way, right? So, even though there was some good that came out of the movie, but we think that movie was ultimately produced as a way to try to take away and turn people against the Nation of Islam. And it failed, right? Because we're still here. And so with with On the Wire, when that character came out on The Wire, there were actually people in the community there in Baltimore that were protesting that, because they said that man, even though they didn't say he was in the Nation of Islam, but he has a suit and a bow tie on, and people know what that represents when they see that, right? And so, when you see stuff like that on television, it's not done by accident, right? There's a certain image that they want to paint people with. They want to paint us as a Nation of Islam in.
Gotcha. Because, I just think a lot of people just, if the media can actually kind of make
yes, indeed,
you kind of believe what you want to believe sometimes. Indeed. I even saw they even have buttons to make you laugh, and you ain't even trying to laugh.
Yeah.
So it's I love to hear people, tell their story and their side. Because I had on the Black Panther Party son, Fred Hampton Jr. He came on and told his story, and I was it's a lot of things that you don't know unless you hear it out the horse's mouth. That's why I was I have someone right here, right now representing.
And any questions that you have, man, we tell people to definitely ask. We are about our people, and we are about bettering the condition of our people, and also teaching our people how valuable they are, right? There's a scripture in the Bible where God speaks about his people. He says, "My people die from a lack of knowledge." And people will tell you God has everybody, but why does God say my people? He's talking about a specific people. And if they're dying, by what knowledge are they dying from? We have universities all over. Look in New Orleans, you have Xavier University, Dillard University, Southern, Tulane. So we have knowledge, but what people is God talking about in this day and time that's dying from a lack of knowledge, and what knowledge are they dying from? So the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said that the people in that scripture in the book of Hosea that are dying, he's saying that's talking about black people in America. And the knowledge that we are dying from is that we lack a knowledge of ourselves. And let me tell you how important the knowledge of yourself is. Imagine that there's an eagle, right? An eagle has a nest, and there are 3 eagle eggs in his nest. The mother eagle flies away. The 3 eagle eggs, one of them hatches, it pops out, looks around, it never sees another eagle. Imagine a farmer comes and grabs that eagle and places that eagle on a chicken farm. This eagle grows up with chickens all of his life. Whatever the chickens do, that's what the eagle does. Whatever the chickens eat, that's what the eagle eats. Where the chickens sleep, that's where the eagle sleeps. If you had the opportunity to go to this eagle that's been raised on a chicken farm and ask it, are you an eagle or are you a chicken? What would it say? It will say, I'm a chicken. Even though it will look at the other chickens and say, my feet are not like theirs. My beak is not like theirs. My feathers are not like theirs. But because it grew up in that environment, it will see itself as a chicken. Now, look how deadly that is when you have an improper view of yourself or you lack the knowledge of yourself, right? Imagine they're on the farm and these chickens come up to a fence that they can't see through or they can't see across. And one chicken turns to another chicken. Man, I sure wish I could fly off of this farm and fly over this fence. And they turn to another chicken and it will say, man, I sure wish I can fly over this fence too. And those chickens turn to this eagle that thinks is a chicken and acts as it. What about you? Now here, this eagle that's by nature, it can fly over the highest mountain on the planet Earth, which is Mount Everest, 29,141 feet high. Eagles can even fly over thunderstorms, over clouds when it's raining. But here, because this eagle thinks it's a chicken, it'll look at this small brown fence and say, man, I sure wish I can fly over that fence and get off this farm as well. So here, this eagle can't even use its God-given talents because in its mind, it doesn't see itself as an eagle. It sees itself as a chicken. And that analogy is how we believe what is happening with black people. We think that we're everything else but what God created us to be. And as a result of that, because we think that if we're in different parts of New Orleans, I'm a 7-ward hardhead, I'm an 8-ward, I'm a East Beast, I'm a 8-ward animal or whatever, 10-ward villain. Right? Or we're in LA, I'm a Crip, I'm a Blood. We're in Chicago, I'm a GD, I'm a BG, whatever this is. We're thinking that we're all of these different things, and those are far from what we are, and we can't use the God-given talent that God has placed in us in our nature. So the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan say that we are the original people on the planet Earth. The black man and woman, we are the oldest people on the planet Earth. We're the first people to ever walk under the sun on the planet Earth. So when we begin to start understanding that knowledge, we can begin to start using our gift. And you mentioned Malcolm X earlier, right? Do you know what they were calling Malcolm X when he was in prison? Malcolm X was cutting up so bad that prisoners gave him the nickname Satan. Now, I've had the opportunity to speak in numerous prisons, federal, local, state, and I've never met an inmate that cut up so bad that other inmates call him Satan. That's how bad Malcolm X was cutting up. But guess what transformed Malcolm X's life? The Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad began to start writing Malcolm X. And prior to that, Malcolm X's brothers and sisters joined the Nation of Islam, and they began to start sharing with Malcolm X what they had learned from the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And after Malcolm began to start directly interacting with the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, it began to start changing his mind. He used to write the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad using slang, and he didn't want to keep doing that. So he decided to go into the library and start reading the dictionary and start learning, improving his vocabulary. Then, because of what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad was teaching him and expanding his mind, he started reading books in the library, and it transformed him. So Malcolm, he was called Satan inside the prison, but he left out of that prison being known as Malcolm X. And when I read about that story, I think that story is an example of what we read about in the Bible about somebody having Satan cast out of them.
Right. Yeah, I believe in that. And it's like, someone told me something. But a white man told me this, and it made me even think, like, he's like, man, he's like, if you really just if you ever think deeper, it's like, man, you really think they brought all those black slaves from Africa on a boat? Mm-hmm. I said, I don't believe it. Mm-hmm. But it's what, it's kind of like what history tries to tell you. It's the same thing as them. It's the same thing as the media trying to make you believe Malcolm X and like the Nation of Islam fell out a certain way on a movie. Yeah.
And it's, brother, that's why I'm thankful for the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. One of the first things that every member of the Nation of Islam learns when we come in, we learn this question and this answer. Who is the original man? And the answer to that is the original man is the Asiatic black man, the maker, the owner, the cream of the planet Earth, God of the universe. So what we have learned that even before the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage, black people were all over the planet Earth. That's why when Columbus came here, when he met the people that he called Indians, right? They told him like, yo, we met people that came here, jet black people, and they had spears with gold tips. So when you go and research history, they show that the original Chinese person was a black like us. The original Japanese, black like us. The original people in India and Australia were black like us. So there were black people here before the transatlantic slave trade. We're the original people of the planet Earth. And we go back, the Mosaic Elijah Muhammad said that only God could tell us how old we were. We go back trillions of years old, right? We were here before Africa was even given the name Africa.
Right. And I always just was a firm believer of like, I'm like, white people was the first people here. I know that white people can't make black people.
Exactly.
Black people can make anybody else,
There you go.
but white people can't make a black person.
That's it. And
so I always just put that in my mind, like, history gonna be history, but you can't believe everything that you hear.
Exactly. And they even understand that when you look at their research and their science, for those who are reading, you have to read to find it out. And now with social media, you having people that know that information, they're making videos, so more people will find it out. But just like what you said, it's biologically impossible, it's genetically impossible for black to come from white. But they've done studies on the DNA of black women in UCLA, and they looked in the genetic coding of black women, and they found that in the black woman, her DNA, she can produce every, like you have all these different ethnicities of different shades. She can produce every shade of person on the planet Earth. And that bears witness that we are the mothers and fathers of humanity.
Gotcha. So I have this question for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's been wanting to ask someone this. Like, why do you think that us growing to like the certain knowledge is like so much threat to the world? Like basically, but a person who really knows and actually grows like powerful and like, having others follow behind his word, they feel like we're a threat, like of a Martin Luther King or Farrakhan. Like as soon as a person make it to a certain status and a person become a threat, like why do you think that, but they feel like we so much when like why do they? Well, I don't know how to say. Why? I'm trying to get the words how I want to say it.
You're saying why is it that when black people begin to start gaining knowledge, this world begins to start seeing us as a threat?
Gaining knowledge and following. Like soon as you get a certain amount of following, it become a target. Like, oh man,
it's a threat. Well, you got to think about it because this world operates off of our ignorance, right? So you think about a lot of stuff that takes place. It's off the backs of black people's ignorance. Look at hip hop. I love rap music, hip hop. But there are certain aspects of it you can tell that people are using our ignorance to make money. So the more you rap about killing this and shooting this and smacking that, whatever, they're throwing millions of dollars at you. So that's feeding people. I remember an interview that was done on the Breakfast Club when Farrakhan, he came and he had Young Thug on there. I think he came by himself. And Charlemagne asked him, you wouldn't allow rappers to make certain raps about members of the Jewish community. And he said, well, why are you allowing artists to make music that's self-destructive to the black community? And Farrakhan looked and he said, in so many words, I got to feed my family. So people are making money off of our ignorance, right? People are making money off our athleticism. People are making money off of the dollars that we spend. So what happens when we begin to start getting a knowledge of ourselves? And all of these years, people have been saying that we chickens, and now you're an eagle. You can't keep me on a farm anymore. And that's one of the reasons why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan specifically, and there are others, but I want to use him. That's one of the reasons why he is considered such a threat, because he is giving us knowledge that will free us up. He's giving us knowledge to say, stop allowing yourself to be used as a tool and a slave. And if somebody, how does it, like throughout history, they hated Harriet Tubman. Why? Because she was freeing who? Slaves. So imagine a man today, we're not in physical slavery, but we're in mental slavery, that he's freeing us to tell us, man, listen, stop making this music where you're degrading your woman. What's going to happen to the rap industry, right? I watched this whole thing with the Super Bowl, and as I watched the halftime show, the pre-show, and all of the other stuff, and I said, man, if you remove us from that, none of this happens.
So, it becoming one, I'm like minister. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of explain like briefly how your journey was, like actually becoming, going up the ranks of actually becoming a minister?
Yeah, brother, I never entered into the Nation of Islam ever having an idea of seeing myself as a minister, right? And when I look at the terminology minister, we say student minister. One of the meanings of minister, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says, means servant. So that's how I look at it. In the end, I'm still Brother Willie Muhammad. I happen to be the student minister, but that means I'm a servant. And so I was asked to serve in this position during the transitional part of our history of our mosque. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan asked some questions about me. And when they gave him some information about me, he said then he appointed me as to be the student minister of Muhammad Mosque number 46. So I see myself as a servant and I strive to do my best to, to inspire, to be there for the members of our mosque and even those outside of our mosque.
Gotcha. So, did you ever get a chance to actually meet him?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to meet the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on several occasions. The first time I had the opportunity to meet him in person was after Hurricane Katrina in Houston, when I was introduced to him as being the minister here in the city of New Orleans. So I met him there. That began. And what many people don't know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan personally wrote checks over $50,000 to take care and help families that were impacted by Hurricane Katrina here in the city of New Orleans. The minister also used his influence and used his voice to help, along with others, national and local, to help prevent them from making the Lower Ninth Ward into a green space. Remember, they were saying that they didn't want anybody to move back to the Lower Ninth Ward because it wasn't safe. And the minister participating in a town hall meeting right there on St. Charles Street with Watson Memorial, and when he was traveling around speaking, the minister talked about and warned them what would happen if they would try to not allow black people to come back. So I've had the opportunity to meet the minister several times and have one-on-ones. And what I would tell people, the minister is, to me, he's the embodiment of love. As principled and as he is in public, he's that way 1,000 times, even in private, right? The minister is nowhere in no secret meeting when he's not in the public trying to tell people to hate somebody or do harm. Anytime the minister meets someone, he's trying to speak words to them so that they can realize and see the God within themselves and begin to start living in accord with the Spirit of God that God has placed inside of us.
Gotcha. So, for anyone that's watching this interview right now and, thinking about following behind I'm like your lead,
Mm-hmm.
or just trying to think about joining the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any message for them or advice?
I would tell people, listen, we already believe that by nature we're a Muslim. We believe that's what we are. That's why we say you can't join the Nation of Islam, because you're already a Muslim, right? Okay. And a Muslim just means one who obeys God. But for those who are interested in doing so, of course, we would encourage them to come to one of our meetings. We meet at 4201 Diamond Road in New Orleans, Louisiana, right in eastern New Orleans. So that's 4201 Diamond Road. We meet on Wednesdays at 7:30, Fridays at 7:30, and we have our Sunday service where I deliver the lecture at 10 a.m. on Sunday. And I would tell people to come out. Don't worry about people like, do I have to, some women that want to ask, do I have to cover my head or do I have to put a suit on? No, come as you are and come and hear what we have to say. And we don't, you can go to some religious communities and they discourage people from asking questions. We don't discourage people from asking questions. We ask people to ask whatever question that you have on your mind, because we believe that we have the answer. And if we don't have the answer, I know enough people I can reach out to get the answer. For those people prior to you, until you get ready to come to the meeting, you're free to come. Watch the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's lectures on YouTube, right? Follow us on Instagram. We're on Instagram at Mosque_46. That's MOSQUE_46. And we're Mosque46 on YouTube. Watch the minister's lectures. The minister has given lectures talking about the value of the woman. We are taught in the Nation of Islam that a nation can rise no higher than its woman, right? So we stress family, and some people they start thinking about, man, if I come, I'm gonna have to give up this. Don't worry about all of that. First, come and learn about yourself and get the knowledge of yourself, so you can stop acting like a chicken and begin to act and grow into your own eagle capabilities, as I use with that analogy.
Gotcha. So, all right, what's next for you?
What's next for me? Man, what's next for me is to continue. We are in the process of trying to pay off our mortgage, so that's something that we're trying to do so we can be debt free. And the other thing is begin to start building more alliances and more relationships with people in our community. As you're familiar with Brother Horace, he's been making it possible for me to meet with various members of the Black masking Indian tribes, right? And just to let them know that we appreciate their work and we are here for them if they actually need us, right? Right now, we're in the process coming off of Kwanzaa. We were asked to participate in that, and there were various initiatives that have taken place. So we recently had several people to collect various items and goods to donate to a women's shelter. We also we've been having since 2011 our Squash the Beef hotline, where we're trying to do our part to be proactive, to get to people who are having conflicts, to get them to resolve these conflicts before somebody gets shot or get hurt. So those are some of the things that that we are here we are trying to do next, and whatever the Spirit of God leads us, that's what we're going to try to do. And even like in regards to this is a great opportunity. You allowing me to have the opportunity to come on this show and talk about what we're doing is also a part of what we want to do, because it's helping people to hear from us rather than hear from anybody else. And I want to compliment you, brother, and encourage you to continue to keep doing what you're doing, right? With Nolazine. I've seen it pop up on my
Nolazine.
Nolazine, right? Because I know for magazine, Nolazine, right? So keep it up, brother, because what you're doing, you're helping to capture the history, the rich history of New Orleans, because we've had many people that have come from here, the Master P's, the Birdmans, the Cash Money, and they have shown the hip hop community how to begin to benefit from their talent and their art, right? Because oftentimes you have people that are producing this music and they get the opportunity to perform, but they don't get the opportunity to benefit financially from it. And Master P helped to open that door, and Birdman helped to open that door. So what you're doing, man, you're exposing the world to the rich talent that we have here in the city of New Orleans.
Right. Well, it started off with Nolazine. That's for the music. That's why I have, like, what's your story? I want the entrepreneurs, and but I want, like people like yourself to come tell your stories and like how you became, because I feel like everyone's story can actually help someone else. And that's kind of the reason why I do what I do.
I appreciate it for this opportunity, and just like you say, everybody does, man. Hopefully somebody will see this story and they may be going through something. Don't give up, man. A lot of times, one of the things I'm grateful for the teachings of the Mozambique Elijah Muhammad for it helped me to understand that difficulty in our life doesn't mean that God is punishing us. One of the things that they have miseducated us about God about is to make people believe that just because you believe in God, you're not going to have difficulty in your life. Oftentimes that difficulty in our life is to test to see if we can believe in God. It's easy to believe in God when things are going good. But what happens when you begin to be tested, right? And some people begin to start feeling like, man, I'm going through this. I've been praying to God and I don't hear anything. God is not answering. I would say for people who think like that, I would say this, think about when you were in school. When you were in school, what school did you go to, my brother?
I went to Landry for 2 days, but I went to a bad private school. Don't even matter. The name of it.
So you went to, when you think about your time in school, when was the teacher the most quiet in class? When the teacher didn't say anything.
When it was aggravated, when we start talking.
Or also when they were giving a test.
Yeah.
Teachers don't talk when they're giving the students tests.
Right.
So if we are going through something and we feel like God is silent and we can't hear from God, could it be that God is silent because he's giving a test and he's giving us the opportunity to show him what we know? That's something we got to think
that make
about.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to think about that.
And also, last but not least, tell the world. I'm like, what can he find you at on social media
On
and
social
everywhere else?
media, I am brother_Willie on Instagram. And on Facebook, I'm Willie Muhammad, right? On YouTube, you can find us at Mosque46 on YouTube. And, that's where you can find me at. And you can find us at Mosque, MOSQUE_46 as well. That's our Mosque page. And you can begin to see. But I'm brother_Willie at on Instagram. Vince. If you